I'm reporting back on Norway Chess 2026, and in this video I want to show you an amazing game between Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa and Domaraju Gukesh from round 5. Now, let me just give you a quick update. The scores after 4 rounds in Norway Chess. So at the top, Alireza Firouzja on 8.5, and then Prag on 6. Wesley So 5.5, Magnus Carlsen 4.5. So he won a very nice game against Gukesh in round 4. So he bounced back into contention. And yes, Gukesh, well, Kaimer on 4, Gukesh on 3.5. The world champion struggling. So let's take a look at this game from round 5. Praggnanandhaa against Gukesh, and this is pretty amazing stuff. Here we go. Prag against Gukesh. Regular opening. Now black has a big choice here. Bishop e7, c5, c6, but bishop e4, the rag is in. So there's imbalance in the position. Queen a4 check, one of the standard continuations. So black is forced to play knight c6 to protect the bishop. You might think, well, you know, what has white gained by playing the check? Well, it blocks the c-pawn. The knight blocks the c-pawn, so that white's centre is arguably more secure. And now the main moves here are e3 or bishop g5. Prag plays a very unusual move, queen c2. So now Gukesh plays bishop d6 after quite a long think. I mean, castles seems to me is pretty sensible, pretty normal, but bishop d6, so what he's looking to do is use the knight on c6 so that he might be able to break later on with e5. So that's how he wants to try to attack white's centre instead of, well, c5 it isn't possible now. And big think from Prag here. He played bishop g5 after 16 minutes thought. So, you know, it seemed like both players were navigating their way through carefully. You know, they're on their own basically, out of preparation. So Gukesh decided, okay, let's attack the bishop. And Prag exchanged. You don't need to. You could play bishop h4 there, but he has a specific idea in mind, e3. And after castles, so before black gets a chance to exchange on c4 and play e5, Prag closes the position and plays bishop b5. So you can see that with the pressure here, then black cannot break with e5. Well, the pressure on d5 as well. So we've got a very closed position. And that means that, at least at the moment, these bishops aren't doing very much at all. And white has this very nice space advantage. So Gukesh looking to just bring the queen back, and then who knows, maybe play bishop f6 to bring this bishop to a better square. a3, a6, that puts the question to the bishop. Now, you don't want to move back, because then it's going to be easier for black to break with e5 after the bishop goes back to e8. So Prag exchanges, and he plonked the knight into e5. So, well, it's very unlikely that, well, it's going to take a very long time to organise this e5 break. So white threatens to damage the pawn structure, so the bishop came back to e8. So this is such an interesting battle when we have these two knights against the two bishops. And white has this beautiful space on the queen side, so that pawn on c5 locks out the bishop. Although it looks pretty unpleasant for black at the moment, there are ways to fight back here. And, well, one of them is this. b6. So trying to break down this pawn on c5, which will give black more space. You know, you can use that d6 square. And a5. And now the queen drops back, so you can see this is a way of fighting back as well. You can push the knight back, and then that bishop can come into play. You know, maybe g5 will come, and that bishop could find a very nice diagonal. So, yep, the bishops don't look good at the moment, but they have great potential. And rook b8. So, yeah, some exchanges could help black here. e4. Right, well, white has a plan here too. So, okay, there's pressure here. So, black exchanges, and that brings this knight into a nice central position. But it's still not so clear. You know, as before, as I mentioned before, you know, f6 is possible. Just to push that knight back and just bide your time. You know, it could be that g5 comes. It could be that the bishop emerges on c6. So things are not as bad as they seem. This next move is a little bit surprising, rook a7. I mean, one thing that is possible is to make some exchanges here. You know, something like this. And exchange again. You know, that gives black more freedom, and then f6 to push the knight back. And you can see that with these pawn advances, you know, that does leave white a little bit exposed. The king is a little bit exposed. The rook is on an open file. This bishop, on a good day, might be able to bounce out here. But Gukesh went for rook a7, so, you know, maybe he was intending to double rooks, that's possible. Queen e3, but he seemed to change his mind here. I mean, it's still possible to exchange rooks, but he played queen f8, so he's hesitating. King h2, king h7. Well, this is in preparation for some pawn advances. But now, Prag decides to lock the queen side. And c6. So this looks really bad for this bishop on e8, but it can come out after f6. Also, you know, the bishop now looks at the pawn on a3. So it's not clear who benefits from this advance. And now Gukesh redeploys the rooks. So the rook is looking at the d4 pawn. So it's still very unclear, very difficult to say who is better in this position. And finally that knight is pushed back from its beautiful square on e5 and bishop f7. So you can see, well, these bishops are looking a lot healthier. Pressure on a3, but also, you know, is it going to be possible to break with e5 and get the light square bishop into play? And don't forget this break as well, g5, which could free this bishop. Queen e2, queen g8. So queen switches, and there's a masked attack on the knight on c4. Rook c1, so the rook covers. Rook a8, rook a8. So this one comes back into play. d2. So what is white's plan here? I mean, can you somehow organise an attack on the pawn on a4? Maybe that's what he's intending with knight c3. It's really hard to say. And black could wait here. You know, queen f8 and then rook a d8. Just bring that second rook into play. Highly unclear position. There's also g5, and black starts to break out, and you know, white's king, you never know, could be a little bit exposed. But Gukesh went for e5. I should say that, you know, time pressure was a factor here. We're on move 32, they had to get to the time control on move 40, and after move 40, the players only get, that's when the increment starts. After move 40, they get 10 seconds per move. So e5. So this is where the position absolutely explodes. So this opens up the diagonal. d5 closes. And Gukesh has won a pawn. That pawn on f4 is dropped. And yeah, both bishops looking pretty good. If that bishop could sink itself on c5, looking down this diagonal, then black starts to look fantastic here. Queen f2. So just threatening to take the pawn on g5. Well, this is the moment where white has to act, because this will just be fantastic for black. Knight takes b6, so Prag recognises the situation is absolutely critical. He has to go for it. Now, in fact, Gukesh does not need to take that knight. He could plough on with g4 here and just try to open up lines, but he took the knight, and now d6. Bishop f8. Now, who is better and why? It's just such a weird position. Gukesh is a piece up, but those pawns look amazing. And playing this win in short of time is impossible. Impossible to get it right anyway. The computer will point out several continuations that give white a winning advantage, but I tell you what, they're so difficult. Prag took on b6. g4. Now, king safety becomes a massive factor in this game. I mean, black's king isn't altogether secure, but white's king looks worse. You know, there are fewer pieces around white's king. It is possible to push on, but no doubt Prag was concerned about this. And queen g3. The computer tells me there's only one winning move here, queen f2. That's still very tricky. But Prag took on g4, which looks far safer. And then after queen g4, queen f2. Looks very reasonable. But rook e3. Now Gukesh is fighting back. In fact, f3, again, the computer points this out, is a very powerful move. Because after queen takes, queen h4, and queen f4 check, that rook is loose. I'm afraid those rooks are split. And tactically, that's not good news. And after king g1, rook check, picks up the rook on d2, should be winning for black. So f3 was a winning move, but rook e3 also, I mean, looks very natural. Rook d4. So Prag fighting back, looking at that pawn, also pins the pawn, but check. And now queen e5 looks like a powerful centralization. Hits the rook on d4. And now Prag blunders with queen d2. If rook takes and bishop takes d6, remember black is a piece up here. That does look very good for black. The computer points out that this is white's best. Doesn't look great. I can understand why you'd reject this. You know, black is a piece up and the bishops look good, but apparently this is good enough for white to make a draw. But okay, that's tricky. But Prag played queen d2, and now f3. This is looking serious for the king. King f2. Right. Here is where I'm going to just pause the game. I'm going to have a drink. You have a think. How do you play if you were black in this position? Black to play. Cheers. Do you want to improve your chess? Get access to live masterclasses with yours truly? Then subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess, and for just $25 a month, you get a newsletter with a test game, calculation puzzles, a monthly opening survey, access to an archive with over 100 opening surveys. And you can join in live masterclasses exclusive to patrons where you can ask me questions directly over Zoom. All for only $25 per month. Do subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess and join the club. Gukesh found a beautiful idea to continue the attack in this position. He played bishop takes d6. So, well, frees the bishop, the queen can come in, but here's the point. So rook takes bishop, and now rook g8. That rook sweeps across the board and threatens to enter the attack here. And supports the queen as well. I mean, this is devastating. Prag took on f3, and now, short of time, Gukesh's calculation was spot on. He gave up the rook. The bishop joined the attack. Somehow that's very fitting, when this bishop was stuck behind these pawns, but now it manages to break out and contributes to the final attack. And queen g3, and after that Prag resigned, because if king f1, then queen g1 is checkmate, and that flight square is covered by the bishop. A devastating counter-attack from Gukesh there, and he's been struggling with his form, and I feel really so sorry for him. He's under so much pressure as the world champion. But this is just a reminder that he is a superb attacking player. And this was not a perfect game. It's so complicated it never could be, even in, classical chess with a long time control. And it's especially difficult when, this is a kind of, let's say, a shortened classical game. But great final attack from Gukesh. I'm very pleased with him. He had his 20th birthday on the 29th of May. He's still so young, and I hope he manages to recover his form just in general. Okay, let's have a look at the standings. After 5 rounds, so we're at the halfway stage. So that brings Gukesh back up the tournament table. He's on 6.5. Wesley So is on 8.5, and Alireza Firouzja on 10 points. Now, big game in round 5 was Magnus Carlsen against Wesley So, and Carlsen lost again. Wesley played an excellent game, and well, at a moment when Carlsen needed to just play pragmatically and perhaps steer the game towards a draw, he pressed on, and Wesley So took his chance and outplayed him. So Carlsen not on the best of form at the bottom of the tournament table. Now, we're only halfway through the event, and with this scoring system of 3 points for a classical win, and then 1.5 if you win the Armageddon, and so on, it's difficult to really determine what's going on. But what's quite clear is that Carlsen, if he's going to bounce back, well, he needs to do so pretty soon. I think we'll really only know what's going on in the tournament with a round to spare, with a round to go. But anyway, for the moment, Alireza Firouzja is in the lead with 10 points. He beat Vincent Keimer in their Armageddon game yesterday. So let's see what happens for the second half of the tournament. I shall report back soon.